second. And I think we're live. Pat, it
Wow, how did that
worked.
happen?
I don't know. It's technology working. Hello, everybody. Oh, it's good to see this community back. Um, we are officially in season 2, Pat. We made it. Our contract was renewed.
Who are these people you're negotiating with? I don't. Who are these
I
these
mean,
producers? I don't know who it is.
it's well, you might know some of them. I don't want to drop names like Scorsese and things like that. But but
Yeah.
they're watching us and they have renewed us.
Okay.
So we'll see. This might be an HBO show in a couple of weeks, couple
It
months.
certainly seems like it could be.
I think it should be, actually. Not even could be, it should be. Um, so it's good to see some names that we know. And I love all the greetings. Hello, Jean. Hello, Nicole, Chris, and Elsa. Always good to see you. And Straussy from Germany. Yes, great to see you. Again, a fellow um, Aon person who was with us, well, before our time at Aon, Pat. And Allison, I didn't see you on top there. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey, Allison.
It is, we are really excited to be back. I think it was 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. We took a little time off. Pat, you took a little road trip to New York. Um, and now we are super excited to be back. And there's so much to talk about today. Um, so our theme today is all about data and how do we use data for good. Um, and we are bringing on momentarily, we'll be bringing on Mr. Al Adamsen, the rock star of data. As I joked in an earlier post, you wanted the best, you got the best. This will be the hottest live show in the world.
I think Al is the hardest
Paul
working man.
Stanley?
Huh? Paul Stanley.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
I know. I said I think Al
yeah,
is the
Al.
he's the hardest working man in HR or HR tech.
Yeah,
Like
you
James
know what?
Brown was the hardest working man in show business. I think
I'm gonna
Al's
see
kind of
if
like he's kind of the hardest working man in
I needed to
HR.
make sure Al was on so he could hear, and he is on, so he did hear that. So there you go. So now, Al,
He said that's funny. That's
we'll we'll take the $100 later. You can just wire it to us for saying that.
Wait,
No,
I didn't realize you had incentive programs going on with gas. Where's his money
season
going?
2, baby, season 2. Come on, things are different. We
Yeah,
have advertising, we have everything going
yeah.
on.
Allison,
Allison, good to see you. So Pat, I thought one thing we could do today, since it's all about data, and we're going to talk about how we can use data and how we should be using data for good and how we need to be stewards of data and use it responsibly and effectively as we think about whole person experience, as we think about diversity, inclusion, and equity, as we think about workforce planning. Um, but we've been doing some fun, really random, low-key research. Myself and Sonia Lucina from Question Pro, we've been thinking through some quick poll questions that we wanted to ask. And Question Pro has some really cool panel real-time research, Pat, and I told you about this, but what everyone doesn't know is you haven't seen the actual data responses yet. We just did this literally end of the day yesterday. I got results back this morning. And I want to try to produce this in real time and show you some of these results because I think it's really relevant and kind of interesting and fun too. So, Pat, you're going to be sort of the getting your real life on the spot opinion as we look at this
this
data.
is this is the dilemma of having absolutely no script. We never know what we're going into with this. So thanks for
The
surprising me with this.
season
Always
2,
unpredictable.
Scorsese said, it all sort of comes together in different. I gotta, you know, different themes finally find their way together. So I'm going to just share my screen. I hope this works. Um, and you should see
There you go.
the screen now. Awesome. So I want to set a little context. So we wanted to just start teasing, just getting some random samples. This is U.S. based data only. So I know we have a lot of folks on the call who are outside of the U.S. So just for some really quick analysis, we did only reach out to to a US sample of about 300 people. Um, so one, before I walk through this first question, last week on LeapGen, who are great friends of ours, they do a weekly show as well. And Jason Averbuch and Jess Von Bank talked about a recent study that was uh, it focused on why people are excited to come back to the workplace, right? People are coming back to the workplace um, in some capacity. And there was a poll and some research done, and it was published on LinkedIn. And I'm sorry, I don't know who did the actual research itself, um, but Jason advertised it and talked about it, and it was quite interesting. And the core key theme that came out of why people are excited to get back to the office was simply for mingling with colleagues. That was number one, or slightly, it was, yeah, mingling and connection were sort of the two key things. So people are missing being around humans. And it was pretty interesting. It was 10, 20 points above collaborating on work projects and things that are much more relevant to why we go to work every day. But it was really around mingling, friendship. So we asked yesterday, we said, aside from work fulfillment, what else would you like to get out of the workplace? And an overwhelming 56% friends, right? So people are looking to make connections, to make real connections, to make friendships at work. And so this was a um, pretty massive uh, kind of first place response. And the second one is meet like-minded people, which again sort of falls on under the people who have similar interests, who likely could be friends or acquaintances. And then community involvement and romantic partners. So I hate to break it to everyone, it looks like love in the workplace is number four, or people are on a survey aren't comfortable saying I'm trying to meet a romantic partner. Um, but Pat, what are your first thoughts on this, with just this idea of people wanting friendship out of right now, this time, this is yesterday's data, real
Yeah.
people in the workforce responding yesterday. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely interesting data. I mean, the first thing I would ask is, would this have been similar if we had done this 2 years ago? This question, but and certainly the fact that friends being the number one response isn't. It doesn't surprise me if you were to ask me to guess. It also certainly reinforces Gallup's approach to thinking about employee engagement, right? I have a friend at work as
Yeah,
being sort of like kind of one of the kind of key questions about how people feel engaged and connected with their workplace. But in the context we're in now, I would say, I mean, it's not surprising at all that people are certainly. So I would speculate. My
yeah,
hypothesis would be that the friends percentage has probably gone up from what it would have been, say, 18 months ago, pre-pandemic, um, because I think people are starved for connection.
yeah.
And
I,
and the other part of this, which I find somewhat interesting, and it gets a little bit deeper into the ideas, is we think about friends. There's friends in three dimensions, or I guess four dimensions if you're with them at the office. And then there's making friends through the virtual world as well. I mean, like Dan, you and I had an experience with this recently. We've been working with a client, that happened to be based here in the Twin Cities, and we did about 2 or 3 months worth of work with them. Had never met them in the real world. Did all of our consulting and work with them virtually, and then we had a chance to go meet with the team um, in their office here in the Twin Cities, and it was just so cool. It was to know people. Well, I feel like we were building friendships and connections because we were having those ongoing kind of weekly conversations, and then you see people in 3D, and it's like, boom, it's just like so heightened,
yeah,
because there's space around them, and there's actually three dimensions instead of just two dimensions, and
yeah,
so I do think a little bit about this idea of friends, and when you guys say in the workplace, it doesn't say in the real workplace versus virtual workplace, but I do think it's not
yeah,
surprising to me that friends is a key idea, but I do think about how it manifests more specifically. Maybe you have a follow up to this
yeah.
too,
All
kind of
the,
more
and
specifically in terms of how it takes shape in the virtual versus real world.
and this data, again, this is just to give us a quick sense. And Gene, great question. Yes, we can get it by demographic. I don't have that yet, and I'm actually very excited for that because I know exactly where you're going with that.
Which
Is
the sample
it,
size is 300. Yeah.
right, right. But even if we were to look at I mean, we'll see. We'll see if our hypothesis is correct, but certainly we know loneliness across, the, the Gen Z population, and that was actually why they were the most tech savvy during this 16 months, and doing Zoom felt normal to them, or FaceTime. But what they missed most was getting out and meeting people and building connections. And we know that's a part of growing up. That's a part of being in
Yeah,
your 20s,
especially
right?
exactly.
So yeah, so we don't have that data yet, but once we formalize this research, this is a quick peek for our community here. I want to move fast through these next couple because I really want to get Al on super uh, fast here because we have so much to talk about. But and the second thing we asked was what resonates with you when you think about being your most authentic self at work. And I just want to highlight the top two here. And this was not surprising, but it kind of reinforced a lot of what we talk about. And it's free expression of ideas and freedom of opinion. So people are hungry, right, to contribute. This is so important, right? Other things, being able to feel wrong and being able to be vulnerable. These are, of course, we know that these are important. But as far as an individual, when we think about authenticity and being your authentic self in the workplace, having having the ability and being empowered, right, to bring your ideas to the table and bring your opinion to the table, overwhelmingly took the lead over everything else. So this is not a surprise, but it's a really nice confirmation. Pat, any
Yeah,
words on this?
I mean, you definitely are right. There's these both freedom of opinion and freedom of ideas jump to the top here. And I mean, this is, I mean, when we think about the research that's been done about the importance of creating psychological safety in the workforce to
Yeah,
enable free expression of ideas and freedom of opinion, this is just further reinforces that. This is what people want, and the more confidence that they have, the more kind of sense of safety that they have to be able to contribute towards
yeah,
ideas and opinions. You can see it's closer to them feeling more authentic, right? Being able to be we would say, their whole person. I think
yeah.
this is very not surprising at all, and definitely kind of reinforces the thesis that we've been running with, right?
Yeah, and I think, Pat, that people want to, bring their ideas and opinions into the workplace and rally around the purpose and the values and the mission of an
Mhm.
organization, right?
Right.
People want to be a part of it. People want to be a part of something greater than themselves. And this clearly is helping to give us data
Well, I think
and showing us that.
and there's a little bit more of a nuance to that too, Dan. You're absolutely right. Like the sense of feeling connected, but also feeling though they're contributing toward that
Yes.
connectedness, right? Like my ideas and beliefs, my opinions connect with purpose here. That really charges me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple more minutes, then and Al, you're on deck, and we're going to give you an intro in a moment here. For those who don't, everyone knows Al, but we're still going to give you an intro. So this is an
Excuse me.
interesting one. So we kind of went. We wanted to know. And as we think about leaders in the year 2021, um, and what makes a great leader, what traits specifically should leaders embody? Um, this was a select all question that we did, and just looking for a rank order. And so if we just look at the top five, right? Integrity, number one. Strength is number two. Um, and not surprising, but it's also right in between. You can this idea that strength, you can't be a strong leader and not be empathetic, right? Or not have integrity, right? That's BS, right? In fact, the strongest leaders are those, and I think this is proving this, those who are optimistic, those who are empathetic, those who do show up with integrity every day. That's strength. Strength isn't I know what to do better than you do, right? I know the answers. I'm not going to listen to my team. And so I love this data because it does show that strength and leadership is important, but it's like a leadership trait sandwich where it's just a piece of it, right? So optimism, empathy, inspiring, patient, right? Integrity, the top five or six. So again, not surprising here from my perspective, but I love this data. Um, it really helps to just solidify what we expect out of our leaders in a 2021 world. Pat, thoughts?
Yeah. I agree with everything you said, and it does. as you think about the competencies and skills you need as a leader, this is, like you said, there's really a kind of a diverse set of skills, right? I mean, integrity should be not surprising at all,
Yeah.
but it's just a reminder how important that is, and it also aligns with even that other idea of just people wanting to feel a place where they can offer their ideas too. So this idea of just a place that is really solid, um, built on a foundation
Yeah.
of integrity where ideas can happen. But then there also, I mean, the strength is really interesting to me too. It's people like
Yeah.
leaders who have that fortitude, right? And that's to see that up there as one of the top competencies is interesting. The optimistic, empathetic isn't surprising to me either, but that
Yeah.
strength thing really is, in some ways, I would have guessed that would have been a little bit lower. So it's
Yeah,
interesting
I
to see
was
as
I
high
was
as it is.
thinking so I was thinking that so I was a little surprised about that too, Pat, actually that and it's funny when we were doing this yesterday, we decided to just throw that in because it's a little bit of a trait that was, in my opinion, a little old fashioned. But on the other hand, and there's a great comment here, Straussy, you said, does strength and being decisive overlap? And yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. There is definitely overlap. I mean, being decisive, being confident in decisions is a form of strength. So absolutely. And as we start to really tighten up this research, and we're going to be doing a more formal research study, so expect lots of cool data coming. So great point.
And,
Um,
and, and one final thing before you leave, Dan, I think this is
yeah,
actually as interesting. The bottom is opinionated, right? So people aren't looking for a leader to have an
yeah,
opinion about things. That's like so low. They're looking for someone that they can, that they feel connected to, that they can count on, that's functioning well, but they're not looking for a leader that has a strong opinion, right? And then you think
yeah.
about that coupled with people wanting to hear their ideas heard, that earlier thing, it makes you really think or the importance of that. It makes you really, if you're doing culture work, it makes you realize how you need to think about
Yeah.
designing those kinds of dynamics.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, and it is funny how opinionated. Well, and I think the word opinionated just has a little bit of a,
Loaded.
yeah, it's a little bit of a loaded word. So anyway, the final question we just did something. It was we wanted to just really get some quick data on this concept of work-life balance, and we wanted to ask a very direct question, and it's not a really realistic question I think we would ask employees, but we wanted to just get a response on this to help drive the next part of the research, and that was, would you want your work life and outside life to feel completely synced into one? And we knew this was kind of a loaded question, but this is why we did this. Or do you prefer to keep them separate? What's fascinating to me is the number one response was somewhat separate. And we didn't give too many options. It was either completely or somewhat in either category. It was either synced or separate. So it was somewhat or completely separate, or somewhat and completely synced. And the fact that somewhat separate with such a loaded question was really interesting to me as we think about the whole person experience. There's a lot of research we're going to do here around work-life balance and how tightly integrated should they be and what parts of you should you bring into work, and vice versa. So I found this question, the data, interesting. I was actually expecting, um, this to just completely separate, to be kind of at the very top, way over to the right. But it's interesting. The idea of being somewhat separate was, um, took the lead. So
And
yeah,
secondarily, I mean, right behind it is completely separate. So there is a real strong opinion
yeah,
I mean,
yes,
31% of the people are saying keep them firewalled, right?
yeah,
So that's as we think about the idea of thinking about a synthesized work,
yeah,
that's, and I just reading something recently about some of the, in Europe, especially I think it was in France or Spain, I can't remember where, but more and more expectations of when someone's not, when people leave the office, like the expectation of them doing email, or being on call, there may be more and more of a kind of a government mandate that you can't do that. That would be against a labor practice.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's just
and
like this is such a debatable topic right now.
yeah, and for us, the nuance really isn't so much work and life merging. It's sort of what parts of you as being, what parts of the person is important
Right.
to bring into work. And that's where we're going to, so that was a starting point just to get a sense of where people are at. But it isn't sort of a binary thing, right? Where
Hmm.
work is either separate or together. It's being able to bring the authentic you to work and be able to give, again, back to that question around being able to give your opinions about things and not feel like it's not listened to or not paid attention to. And that comes into, authenticity, and that definitely drives into inclusion and being heard. So anyway, I wanted to share some of this. This is really early data. I was just super excited this morning when Sonia shared this with me. And so I quickly talked to her about it and said, hey, I'm going to share this. She gave me permission and thumbs up. And we're going to do a lot more research together and expect more to come. So with that, I am going to bring Al to the stage here, and then I will introduce him as he is coming on. Al, you have an invite coming your way. So Al Adamsen, we've known him for years, and he is the founder and CEO of the People Analytics and Future of Work community and conference series. You've probably, if you're on LinkedIn actively, you have seen Al in action. Al's typically interviewing somebody, not being interviewed. So this is going to be fun. I'm a little nervous interviewing such a rock star. There he is.
The hardest working man in People Analytics. Good. How are you doing?
Man.
Doing real well. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I got this big mic in my nose here. I got to drop that down a bit. But hey, thanks for having me on. Great seeing you too.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, good to see you, Al. So I was given an intro. So most people, I'm sure, have seen your face, seen an interview, been a part of one of your conferences. But for those who haven't, we have a pretty global audience here. Just maybe give us a 1 or 2 minute summary of who you are, what you're all about, what you believe in, what you stand for.
Well, I'm Al Adamsen. I am the founder and CEO of PFAO Inc. PFAO stands for People Analytics and Future of Work. And we are about people data for good. And that's promoting the ethical and responsible use of people data, analytics, and AI for the benefit of individuals, first and foremost, teams, groups, organizations, and society at large. And we've taken that stance because data is risky in terms of how it can be used either consciously or consciously for nefarious purposes. However, there are a lot of beneficial ways that data and analytics can be used. And we explore that, elevate those stories, and try and make the world a better place in the process.
I love it. And yeah, we appreciate all the work that you do, Al, and the community that you've built. So really thankful for having you here. So I'm just going to jump into kind of more of a ground setting, level setting question. So when we talk about using people data for good, my first question is, I would hope that historically we've always tried to use it for the right reasons and use it for good, right? And so I guess my question for you is, and I think it's always important to start here, is where have we failed in using people data effectively in the past? What mistakes have we made? And right, what have we learned from that we can take moving forward? So maybe that's a good grounding place to start.
Well, let me just say this. I want to ground this a little bit. I am going to answer your question. I just want to frame it a little bit. So I have an economics background. So for me, as a professional researcher, I just wanted data. If there was a problem, I want to go out and find the appropriate data to solve that problem. The appropriateness or the ethical nature of that data collection process, what insights might be generated, what action might either be taken or not taken subsequently. A lot of these were blind spots for me when I first started in my career. And an example that is very prominent now are diversity data. So going back 20 plus years ago, it was the case where we're not going to look at that problem because we're not prepared to take action on it. And therein lies an ethical dilemma. In fact, even looking back historically, I felt some leaders were irresponsible for not taking that stance and saying, what, we are going to look in this, and pay equity as an example, how women of color are being treated in the workforce. All these things that are now being looked into could have been looked into earlier. And in some cases, the data and analytics and the insights were created, yet the insights were suppressed because legal said, or others said, hey, we're not going to look at that because if we do, like I said before, and we don't take action, we can be held liable. All kinds of comments around that, and that's within the people analytics space, looking at data within an organization around employees and then, analyzing it. And it's all kind of, for me, a very virtuous pursuit. At the same time, it's fraught with risk. And now we have better governance. We have more agile and transparent ways of collecting data. So we have great opportunity. That being said, many leaders, many people analytics professionals still don't know what they don't know. Therefore, they're either overly cautious or they're on the other side of the spectrum. They're kind of yahoos going through and just, the data's flying around all over the place. So really having some discipline around how we do this work is going to absolutely be key. So, and there's examples outside of the people analytics or workforce analytics domain as well, which are long and extensive. So I won't go down that road. But yeah, we have this great opportunity right now. And frankly, as a discipline and beyond just HR and people analytics, like analytics in general, I just hope we take advantage of it so we can build trust as opposed to erode trust in doing this work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, when you talk about that, Al, I think about, the way you described historically the examples that you used, and we would have this data and then we might try to interrogate it, investigate it to learn. It's very much a science process, right? So, that approach, and so meaning we kind of lead with a hypothesis, we're going to run some analysis, we're going to learn. And then we're going to think about what we're going to do with it. And so with it, it brings a sort of scientific rigors with it too, which is ethics, right? And which are all these kinds of things. And no matter what, as we move forward, anytime we're using data, that kind of mindset, that kind of approach is critical because it is, like you said, these are people's lives, that we're and they're both, in many different ways, and we're exposing and learning about that, and that's so there's a lot of responsibility we bring to it. But the other part of it, which maybe where you're going to go with this, Dan, is, but if you flip it and you think about this from a design perspective, which is okay, if we kind of throw away that piece and we think, okay, how are we going to design so we get benefits out of the data, and who's going to inherit those benefits as we design for it. It's a different kind of mindset, right? And it brings a different set of kind of risks as well, different kinds of opportunities, like how do we help someone have a better career? How do we help someone, get paid what they're worth? How do we help leaders be great? Versus we're trying to come at this more from like a risk management perspective, which is where, historically my guess is a lot of this came from.
Correct. And I'll add to that there has been, and it's still out there, is that, okay, people analytics, has to show business value. For me, that translates into commercial value. And that means maximizing the productivity out of the human being, milking them for all they're worth. And I don't like that. I don't like that ethically. I don't believe that to be a truism. I believe we have to balance the human experience with driving productivity and financial outcomes. And that means we have the ability, particularly in this virtual remote work setting where we're creating all this data exhaust, that, hey, people are working at 11, 12 at night. And, is that sustainable for them individually? And if you look across an enterprise, is that, really the culture that we want to be creating? So now as a leader, how can I modify that? How can I maybe hire more, although that might be taboo for some people to say, so people can actually work 40 to 50 hours a week, something that's reasonable. And particularly women in the workforce, as we all know, exited in droves over the time because the reality that emerged did not accommodate what they needed. So if we truly value them as contributors to our organization, productivity, and we honor them as human beings, raise families, have relationships, take care of their health, then we have to find that right balance. And we're uniquely positioned in doing analytics to shed light on that and then identify the most appropriate way forward. It takes a systematic approach. It takes courage. It takes creativity. It takes really clarity of purpose. And those are 3 C's that I've often talked about. We're in this place where we really need to get on that. We need to take a courageous step. We need to be clear on what we're trying to achieve and what's required in terms of the associated budget. And inherently, analytics is a creative discipline. So we have to sometimes create new data. We have to apply the appropriate analytical technique. We have to think about the change management subsequently. So those are connecting a lot of dots. Some people just shy away. Oh, it's too complicated. I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't need it. And that's no longer true. You do need it now. And if you don't apply people analytics in your organization as a leader, you're being irresponsible.
Yeah. So well said. And that kind of leads me to a next point. I've been saying for a few months now, Pat and I have been talking about this, that if we don't make significant and quote unquote radical change right now within our organizations, whether it's in people analytics, whether it's culture, whether it's across experience, whether it's just across how we do business, how we function, it's an insult to the pandemic that we have just lived through.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally we're in a moment of time where for most of us, this was the most significant, life-changing 16 months from a global perspective than we've ever lived through. So if we just start to fall back and continue to use our analytics program and strategy as we did 18 months ago, use our culture strategy, engagement strategy, you name it, and just kind of get back to that because it's easier. We are making the biggest mistake we can make within the organization. So this is always my challenge for anybody listening, anybody who's responsible or a part of teams for making decisions in organizations. So I guess, Al, my question is, now that we are starting to see the light, we're coming around the backside of this pandemic for the most part. Obviously, we know there's places around the globe that are still hurting, and we send our thoughts and prayers to them. But I think it's we have an opportunity now. And so what should we be thinking about? What does a people data strategy look like? And how is it different as we think of as the importance of humanizing the workplace has been center stage now for 16 months, right? Empathy, humility, caring, almost forgetting about data to some degree. And it was just about conversation, connectedness, caring, love, all these things that we know were happening so much more than they were in the past. We were looking less at spreadsheets and data dashboards and more looking at each other, right? That happened, and that was great. So how do we start getting back to normal, continuing to focus on humanizing the workplace, but get robust with data again and use it for good in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. And I'm going to be as pragmatic as I can because it can get esoteric real quick. So I'm going to frame it around one of the slides that you shared earlier. Integrity was at the top. You want leaders with integrity. Integrity is based on the perception of the individual. And if you have 10,000 people in your company, you have 10,000 perceptions of what integrity is. Curiosity was down at the bottom. And frankly, if I have a leader in my organization, I would like him or her to be very curious because that means they have a growth mindset. That means they have the willingness and capacity to learn and take action on that learning. And so when we talk about analytics and the insights that we generate, who is the customer of that insight? And are they prepared to take appropriate action? So in English, that means, given the pandemic, many people analytics teams elevated in their stature and influence. You want me to mumble that again? I'm mumbling really well right now. Elevated in their stature and influence. Others just fell by the wayside because they could not respond to the needs that the business needed. And so what really happened? Well, you had HR in the room with facilities and finance and legal, digital transformation was there. You had these tiger teams that were like, oh, damn, what do we do? And they came in and they figured stuff out. And they were meeting once a week. And most often they did great work. And people analytics, if they were present and capable, were right there in the room. And now they might not be meeting weekly, but they're still meeting monthly or on an ongoing recurring basis to devise hybrid work strategies. And what culture do we want to create? How are we going to manage that culture over time? So I now, even though I'm branded around, people analytics and people data for good, when I think about the future of work, I'm thinking more about work strategy or work transformation. How does work get done? Employees are part of that work ecosystem. So are contractors and consultants. The dynamic that's happening in the world right now is very similar to what happened in 2008 and 2009, where employers contracted. And now we're coming out of it. There's a lot of hiring going on. However, there's also outsourced providers. There's robotic automation. There's global solution providers that are doing work. So what does that ecosystem of work look like? The last thing I'll say is most of those things, and forgive me for the license on the use of the word things, that are doing work are human beings. And do we understand who they are, where they are, what their capabilities are, what their constraints are, capacity? We're just assume, okay, we're just going to throw work at people, work at employees, and they're going to figure it out, and good people will learn to prioritize and get it done. I despise that way of thinking. It's like it's irresponsible. Again, things fall off. It drives burnout. It compromises innovation, a bunch of other things that we know to be true now. So at the end of it, I would hope these tiger teams or governance structures that were set up stay in place, and that people, analytics leaders are facilitating those conversations because they understand the needs of the people, they understand the capabilities of the people. And if we're going to be doing that well over the years ahead, those organizations are going to have a sustainable, hard to replicate competitive advantage in driving innovation, entering markets, and doing a bunch of other great things. So that's my hope.
Wow. Yeah. It's great response, Alan. A few things I was thinking of as you were saying that. One is, I completely agree with you that cross-functional tiger team work that was just inspiring to see organizations work in that capacity, and that kind of extreme collaboration needs to move forward as we think about, I'd say more broadly, employee experience design, right? That whole category, and it cuts across the organization the way you described it, and so much opportunity for changing everything. The second thing I was thinking of is, you talked about really better, kind of thinking, where does work? How does it really take place? How do workers fit into that? And what are people's real needs? Who are they in more depth? So some of that makes me think, and I know Dan and I believe this. We need to understand deeper who people are and what their interests and needs are, right? And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that from a people analytics perspective. Kind of, what's the approach to go deeper to understand people better? To understand more kind of what their desires and wants are, just maybe a little bit. And the second thing, and I noticed that Ian Cook is on our call today as well from Visier, and Ian I know talks a lot about, and I've been seeing this in some recent writings as well, that there's a potential big exodus going on where a lot of people are really thinking about their purpose in life and work. Like the pandemic was like a wake-up call for a lot of people. Yeah. And as people are going to be more motivated to think about their careers from a purpose perspective. So there's a kind of a risk of people just kind of moving on. So there's a couple themes there I'm seeing. One is, well, we can only control so much about that because people are going to do what they want to do. But it does seem to me in front of that is this idea of like, how do we really understand people and their needs a little bit better? And then how do we kind of go from there? And of course, he's got a book on the bookshelf that answers the question, I suspect.
Reading lessons from Al Adamsen.
The purpose gone about Aaron Hurst. Absolutely. We can play that game all day. But yeah, you're actually, spot on, Pat. And do you want me to comment on that? I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just kind of cut across those two things. Yeah. So, right. How do we understand people, right? People better at work and measure from people analytics perspective. I know it's a little philosophy and then measurement. And then how do we think about this kind of potential, exodus of some of our brightest, potentially kind of, like you said, because the purpose perspective moving on.
Yeah. Great question. And here's where my initial hit on that is that, and you too may have heard me talk about this in the past, is just after the basics, it's my belief that people want three things. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be empowered. We don't want to be invisible. We don't want to be ignored. And oftentimes we don't want to be told what to do. We want to be given resources to go off and do what we do and employ our greatness. It's just like really something that I try and do in my own life with my kids and those that I have the privilege of working with. It is, however, that when we think about doing it at scale, that means, employee listening, that means surveys, that means, looking at O&A insights and taking, appropriate action. So you're absolutely right. If leaders spend time truly trying to see, hear, and empower people, they're going to see that women have been disenfranchised, not only throughout history, but with the pandemic, and we see that happening. Also, it's the case where, hey, this organization just created a return to work policy, and I don't like it. And I got choices because there's a lot of hiring going on and I have high value talent. Therefore, my propensity to move is really, really high. And in fact, I have not been heard by them. They say they want me back in the office 3 or 4 days a week. I got 2 young kids. I ain't going to do it. So I grew up as a 53-year-old man in what I call the suck it up generation. You got a job. That's the way it is. You're lucky to have it. Just do what you're told. Suck it up. This generation and generations to come are not going to operate under that mode. They are going to say, this is BS. I'm out of here. And the data is reflecting that. And so the idea that if we can truly see, hear, and empower people at scale over time, again, that's going to be a source of competitive advantage. That means we can be agile and respond to the unique needs of individuals and, more realistically, groups. So, and when I say realistically, yes, you can empower a manager to get better insight, but that's really at a discussion level. When we talk about data and analytics, we're going to need it at scale. So, but if I see, hey, we have women of color who are in their 20s who we're just not retaining them. Well, why? If you can find out why, then you can make adjustments that are within reason. And now it's very much a business decision that, hey, we're going to make this investment because it's really important that we retain that group. If you don't have those insights, you're just going to be guessing, or you're just going to be saying, it's not important to me, and I'm just going to let it go. So it's very much kind of voting with your budget, voting with your priorities. And I, again, hope that more progressive leaders and organizations make the investments necessary, because just because you have HR technologies lying around, it takes an analytical solution or set of solutions, as well as human beings to drive the cart to actually generate the insight and in turn drive action downstream. So that doesn't happen for free, and it takes time and learning and all these other things. So yeah, that's my hope.
And experimentation, right? I mean, there is no sort of silver bullet with a data analytics strategy.
It's about learning.
To experiment. Yeah.
It's about learning. And that's one thing with data analytics, and I've been coaching people forever. It's like, hey, if you're searching for certainty, you're in the wrong business. This is not happening. Right. If we can explain a certain, and I'm talking about 15, 20% of the variability, we're in a really good place. We're high-fiving in the hallways, us propeller heads, we're doing that. But, hey, that's something where, okay, we understand better than we did before, so having that be the goal, because we're always going to put our lens over it. And so, again, don't even get me started, about that. But really, the perception, because one of the pre-questions that you asked, if I might, if you want to go down this road, and I'm interested in your take as well, with fake news and this data that flies around that's misinterpreted, misused, is we have to be very conscious of our internal customer and the lens by which they're viewing the insight that's being generated, and creating a safe place for them to interpret it and then explore ways forward. The idea that we have situation A, we do intervention B, and C is going to result with 100% certainty is never going to happen, ever. In this line of work, we're going to have situation A. We're going to say it's highly likely that if we do B, that we'll have this return to some degree. So that is a little bit noisy. It's the way marketing works. You're I don't want to say throwing stuff against the wall, but you are prioritizing based on the knowledge and insight that you're able to generate. Is there some gut in there?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. You got to make decisions at the end of the day, but it's going to be based not only on the quality of insight, but on the quality of your openness and willingness to learn and explore ways forward that are truly going to achieve the desired outcomes.
Yeah, I love that, Alan. And I'm going to momentarily, it really is, from my perspective, it's kind of intuition versus evidence-based decision making. And what is the balance there? And especially, with these echo chambers where facts and reality get so muddied down, and it's dangerous. Look, I mean, there is no immediate fix there, but I do want to touch on that a little bit. We could probably go down a big rabbit hole on that topic. No, knowing
really?
you, Alan, and
Are there any examples in the public domain right now?
I can't think of any real life examples right now. But before I do that, the community has just so many questions coming in, so I want to get back to one. So Gene asked, so the majority of examples, case studies, and people analytics come from Fortune 100 companies. So how can small to medium-sized businesses get into the conversation? And I guess I would add on to that, is the strategy different? What are your thoughts on that question?
So any organization of any size can and needs to be doing this work in some form. And when I say of any size, I mean, I used to say like 1,000, 2,000 and above. I'm now talking 20, 30, 50 people. Because at that point, you're starting to not know everybody in the organization. And particularly given with remote work, in some cases, you might not have even met them before, or maybe met them once or twice. How then can you truly make people feel seen, heard, and empowered, over time? So to answer the question, we have in HR technology taken what I would call a process-centric approach over the course of history, meaning I need to recruit better, therefore I'm going to secure an ATS. I need a payroll system because I need to pay people. I need a core HCM tool, therefore, I'm going to get Workday or get BAMP, whatever is top of mind, but those are transactional systems, and they're meant to either stand up a process or improve a process. What I would advocate is that we actually take a data-centered approach, and that's somewhat cliche. And I would even correct myself in talking about an employee or experience-centered approach, human-centered design.
Yeah.
And so, okay, these are the experiences that I want to create for candidates. These are the experiences that I want to create for employees. Data is going to be the enabler by which I create an experience for them, and I learn and improve that experience over time. What technologies are going to enable me to generate those experiences, those nudges, those insights, those things that are going to help the individual, that are going to help the manager, that are going to help the organization, at large. So that's where, smaller companies, mid-sized companies, if they're really thinking about it, there are tools out there now that have this kind of employee experience approach. I don't want to be cliche. I frankly like worker experience better than employee experience, because so many of the people doing work now are not employees. They're contractors, consultants, they're partners, whatever. So that just a footnote. But if you have an integrated solution, or more accurately, a solution that plays well with others in terms of its data mobility, then I think a lot of good things will happen in the future. It's just that mindset is not the prevailing one, particularly in small to mid-sized companies, at least not yet.
Yeah, great response.
I'm sorry I don't have more opinions about this.
No, it's great. Al, you never have opinions. Come on, we know that.
No.
Yeah, and just to riff off a couple things you were saying, Al, it's like we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but how do we think about using analytics to support design work specifically, right? And I do think that's a big part of the shift in the mindset, which is right. How do you help people find better matches for where they want to work and have great careers? How do you keep them, more connected to their work and find opportunities when they're inside an organization? How do you help them kind of, shift and build toward what they want? And we use data to support those design outcomes, and we do need to think empathetically, so to speak, with what people's needs are, and then work backwards towards where do we find the data to enable, that growth and that change and that, that opportunity for folks.
Well, I'm gonna. I might miss the total mark on terms of what you want in response to this, but I'm going to say this is that data analytics, AI, I'm trying to make it disappear. And what do I mean by that? People analytics and future of work. There's always going to be a future of work. There's always going to be things changing, and we are going to have to plan and prepare for that. Historically, I go back 20 plus years. Metrics and analytics have been a top 1 or 2 priority for CHROs almost every year for the past 20 plus years. And here we are. And has it evolved? Absolutely. There's some great tools, and celebrate that. The thing about it is data and analytics and AI have been viewed as initiatives. And it's like having an electrical initiative. We're not talking about electricity and households. We're saying, hey, we want a room and we want lights over here, and we want a computer over here. We want some electronic thing over here. The data that is going to help us, the data and insights that are going to help us formulate, measure, and manage strategies on how we're going to address the future of work in the years to come, and hopefully very quickly, is going to be a salient way of doing things. And there are going to be plumbers, there's going to be electricians who are, their work is to plug all that stuff in and make sure it works ongoing at scale, just keep the lights on. And those people, those individuals, those technologies have to be celebrated. They have to be resourced, all fine and good. In terms of the consumers of that, we need to be way more educated. I believe the data and insights is frankly more advanced than a business leader's willingness and capability to use the insight that's being generated. That's part of my mission. That's part of my job right now, is educating leaders on what they're missing out on, the opportunity costs, the competitive advantage they can achieve by doing this work well. So again, I'm probably nuanced off the response that you were looking for. I just really believe this to be something that, looking at my 20 plus years in the space, that we're on the cusp of this, and COVID accelerated not only digital transformation, but our ability and to do this work at scale. And, so here we are. The decision point is right in front of folks. Agreed. I see some investments being made. Is it enough across the board? Absolutely not.
Yeah. I'm paying attention to time of about 5 minutes. And now that brings me to, I guess, a final question based on what you just said. What from your perspective, what are the game changers? As we start thinking about our people analytics strategy into the future, what data sources haven't we been using well? and where do we need to spend energy evolving, whether you're a small tech partner creating something new, creating something cool that's going to be useful, or whether you're just an organization that's been ignoring certain data because you just don't know how to use it. And I'm talking, of course, AI falls into this conversation. Social media data falls into this conversation. Scraping internet data falls into this conversation. But specifically, where should organizations be thinking as they really think about game changing their data analytics, people analytics strategy?
Well, number one, I would. So there's, you probably heard me say this. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. And that's a Chinese proverb. And it's been one of the governing constructs of how I walk through the world. And particularly in our discipline, we talk past each other. And when I talk about discipline, I'm talking about HR, I'm talking about business in general. We're talking, oh gosh, I don't want to ask what workforce planning means because that's going to make me sound stupid. Or what's employee experience? What's design thinking? All this stuff. So if I look at an organization and the language that they're using, they're talking about culture, they're talking about engagement, they're talking about inclusion, they're talking about diversity, they're talking about pay equity, they're talking about all this stuff. And they're viewed as separate initiatives. When we're really creating an experience that, people, human beings are not, oh, that's engagement. Oh, that's communicate. That's comp. They're having a experience that a variety of factors are affecting. So if we take an experience first viewpoint, like we're talking about, and then understanding the data that is generated or that needs to be generated to improve that experience and create better insight, then that process is the game changer from an organizational perspective. It's not, going out and searching for a new technology. Footnote. You're likely going to need a people analytics specific technology to bring this to life at scale. Because I used to do this when I started, I did it on an event driven basis, pull a bunch of data, do the analysis, put it in a deliverable, share that deliverable out. That was done. Oh, that was great. Can you tell me more? Oh, damn. I got to go back and redo. Now we can do that in an automated fashion. That type of technology probably needs to be in place 9 out of 10 times. That said, when I hear, oh, what's my people analytics strategy? What's my data strategy? Well, that's going to be part of a work strategy. That's going to be part of an experience strategy. So if I'm having this discrete initiative that's not connected to something bigger, I've failed right out of the gate. So again, the operating model, governance structure, whatever language you want to apply to it, really understanding first who, then what. So first, who's going to be in the room? Okay. What are we trying to achieve? Then the how comes after. It's like, okay, I want this executive leadership team to understand that culture is their number one priority. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I just say it eats all meals all the time. It eats strategy, all meals all the time. So if that's a truism, we all believe that people are our most important asset. Therefore, we want to create a fantastic experience. How are we going to do that? Who's going to need to be in the room? Facilities, IT, HR, legal, they all got to be in the room. First two, then what? Well, let's create this fantastic, let's architect it, apply human-centered design principles, all this stuff. Out of that falls the people strategy, the people analytics strategy. So again, hooking that up is absolutely essential. And that's my hope for our discipline from an organizational perspective. The technologies, frankly, are kind of the easy part. I'll throw in one more thing because I know we're at time. Being an educated consumer of the technologies that are out there. So you're not doing bright light all the time. That you're like, hey, this is what I want. This is what I'm doing. I am looking for technologies that are going to fit into my vision, as opposed to going to a conference going, oh, that's cool. I'm trying to solve that problem. And I just go here. If I do have a problem specific solution, I have to ask right at the outset, how does it fit into the larger ecosystem? Can it get into my people analytics solution? Can it help inform my strategy? So hopefully that helps.
Cheers. I love that answer.
Yeah, thank you,
you know,
Al.
and it was the answer I was hoping for, Al.
Unscripted.
Because yeah, unscripted, and because I'm so spot on. And look, everyone from the community. I mean, the work is, again, if that truism, we know people first. If that's the truism, then we have to be connecting more within organizations. And we talk
Right.
about who owns this. I mean, so many people on this, and everyone has to get into the room together. We cannot live in silos. So those working on culture, those working on EX, those working on development, those working on DEI, those working on development, those on onboarding, exit, and then sort of a small team over here doing data analytics, and there's rarely conversation. What an epic failure that that will come out of that, right? So organizations have to do better with that coming together, putting together those truisms. Really, what is their purpose? What are they trying to achieve? And that's the work. That's the hard work. And
Absolutely.
just so well said. And Pat, do you have any final words
No,
before I say
you guys,
good night and
you
goodbye?
guys dropped the mic on both sides of me. So thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Al. I mean, it's been a while since we've had a chance to chat too, because of the pandemic and everything. I just love your approach. Your rich thinking around how all these things fit together. You bring such a unique talent to this space and industry and category. So, thank you for being part of our show and kicking off season 2.
It's great. And
Hey, thanks for your support. Thanks for the kind words. You two be well. And hope to see you very soon in person.
Hopefully.
Yes, very soon.
Right.
I hope. Hopefully,
All right, be well, guys.
Tech or something. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
community.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.